welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade. So today we're going to talk about an archetype, and one of the archetypes we're going to discuss is the badass, which is actually a sub-archetype. Now we're going to go into this, and hopefully we can get an understanding of what kind of characters can be born from the badass. It's also going to tell us a lot about other characters, such as the warrior and the king. So let's get started. In masculine psychology, there exist many universal human archetypes. Out of many, dozens or maybe even thousands, most can be distilled to 4: the king, the warrior, the magician, and the lover. Each archetype seeks to define parts of the male personality. Every man has bits and pieces of all the archetypes, but his behavior easily falls into a prime archetype. In this video, we will discuss a male psychological archetype through the lens of pro wrestling. This archetype will be referred to as the badass. Technically speaking, this is a sub-archetype. The dominant psychological position is one of the warrior, but because there can be many different kinds of warriors, I will use the badass to mean a specific type of masculine character, one predicated upon strength and aggression, and without a central piece of the warrior archetype, which is replaced with a core requirement from the king archetype. But first, we must describe the warrior. The warrior archetype is one completely defined by conflict. To be specific, war. The warrior is either the destroyer or protector of a territory. He is just as likely to be a savage barbarian clamoring to invade a civilized nation as he is to be the brave soldier who stands at the gate to ward off insurgents. The warrior is a man seeking to perfect his skills through training, showing great dedication to his craft of choice. By gaining knowledge and experience, the warrior becomes more lethal. He becomes more useful in battle. Simply put, he becomes a better warrior. The warrior deals in death and knows that his own fate lies in dying. If he is lucky, he will die in battle, honorably, where his sacrifices will be remembered and appreciated by his posterity. The innate courage of the warrior holds no fear of death. In fact, the knowledge that his path leads to death gives him greater freedom. He engages life and the risks therein. A central concept of the warrior is called the transpersonal commitment. This commitment is a code or oath the warrior has taken and which he places above all other personal relationships. When a warrior pledges allegiance to a flag, a knight is elevated by his king, a samurai makes a vow to his lord. These are all greater than any individual relationship the warrior may have. Wives, children, friends, even allies, nothing is allowed to derail his mission. His loyalty to the cause is absolute, and dying for the cause is seen as an honorable and noble death. It is the transpersonal commitment, the central concept of the warrior, which is missing in the badass. The badass is not driven by such heroic ideals, such as a vow to a nation, a king, or a god. The badass is solely concerned with his own ego. Like the warrior, the badass is dedicated to skill and strength, and is driven by a desire to engage in conflict. While the heroic warrior seeks to further or protect the interest of his nation, his king, or his god, the badass seeks only to pursue his own ends and to make examples out of weaker foes. These conflicts, however, do not seek to further any noble goals. They are purely for power and pride. The badass is driven by ego. An animalistic instinct to assert dominance over others leads him to fight, to crush, and to destroy. His personal image and reputation are his chief concerns, to ensure that the world knows how strong he is, how powerful, how destructive, and that they should fear him. If strength and skill are his primary weapons, then fear and intimidation are his secondary tools. The badass is an alpha male. As such, there can be no competition. All threats must be eliminated. You either submit to his sole authority or be crushed under his boot. Like the alpha males in the animal kingdom, there can be only one. So it is the fate of the badass to supplant the previous badass. Unlike kings, however, badasses do not inherit their territory. They take it by force. But the badass does share some concepts with the noble kings. The fact that the badass is territorial. The badass owns and leads the tribe, and thus owns whatever grounds the tribe walks on. Invasions or trespassing will be seen as a direct threat, which will be quickly dispatched. The badass is often accompanied by a herald, or sometimes called the small guy. He is the badass's messenger, advisor, negotiator, his voice to those who will occupy his realm. The badass is consumed with training and strength, wasting no time on interpersonal concerns. These are the realms of the herald, or the small guy. The badass is often a sadist, taking delight in humiliating weaker foes. He is often cruel and demanding. He's often greedy, controlling, and of course, violent. But he does not last forever. Eventually, the badass comes to his natural end, killed in battle and replaced. His natural limitations reached, his territory and people go on without him. Now that we have fleshed out what the badass is and what it entails, we can use some pro wrestling examples of what a true badass is. I'm going to begin with mid-90s WWF, just because it's probably a little bit easier for people to understand. So 1996, the dastardly Jim Cornette unleashes a new bully on the WWF. The Rocky Mountain Monster quickly establishes himself by pummeling his opponents and authority figures like Gorilla Monsoon. On his rise to prominence, Vader nearly crippled Yokozuna, the massive former WWF champion, a badass in his own right. The change is typified by Vader's slogan, "It's Vader time," meaning he is the owner of any match or segment he's featured in. Vader's destructive path comes to an end at the hands of Psycho Sid at the Buried Alive pay-per-view in 1996. By this point, of course, Vader's badass status, which does not mean unbeatable or undefeated, had been derailed by Shawn Michaels. It was the loss to Psycho Sid, however, which passed the torch. By defeating Vader, Sid was crowned the WWF's new badass. Sid's return in the mid-1990s, was much more impactful than his first run. Fans galvanized around his charisma, his size, and his ability to humiliate heels like the British Bulldog. And his statement win over Vader put him squarely in position to be the man, the master, and the ruler of the world. Sid captures the WWF Championship at Survivor Series 1996 over Shawn Michaels. He did so by targeting an elderly Jose Lothario, hitting him with a camera before bashing Shawn with it and pinning him with a powerbomb. Sid's spot was now solidified. He was truly the master and the ruler of the world. Sid would drop the title back to Shawn at Royal Rumble 1997, before regaining it a month or so later from Bret Hart. Another short run with the title is ended by the WWF's preeminent giant killer and badass, The Undertaker. Undertaker is a significant character in WWF lore. For more than a decade, Undertaker was WWF's preeminent heroic warrior, a giant slayer and monster killer, often kept as an attraction, not as the champion. One of the Undertaker's frequent enemies was the mute, monstrous Kane, his brother and sawed-off badass. Kane's rise was marked by crushing his familiar foes, such as the previously badass Vader, whom he smashed in the head with a wrench. Kane's path of destruction was sniped by Undertaker at WrestleMania 14, though he managed to stay relevant as a threat for a long time afterward. In 2002, Undertaker underwent a change. He adopted the Piker persona, leaning into becoming more evil, otherwise known as Big Evil, and went on a spree of destruction. His victims were numerous, including the Hardy Boys, Maven, and Hulk Hogan. During this time, Undertaker captured the Undisputed Championship and enjoyed a short run. While the title run itself was not anything special, and his losing the title to The Rock at Triple Threat match at Vengeance 2001 was unimportant, Undertaker remained a threat. That was until he finally met his match. The most violent carnivore to stalk the WWF is undoubtedly Brock Lesnar. Accompanied by his trusted advisor and advocate Paul Heyman, Lesnar burst onto the scene in 2002 as a fresh-faced rookie and immediately began amassing a list of victims. The Hardy Boys, the Hurricane, and even the immortal Hulk Hogan, and many more were crushed under his foot. Brock's shining moment came at SummerSlam 2002, where he dethroned The Rock to become the WWE Undisputed Champion in his rookie year. Brock's carnage would meet its ultimate test when he came eye-to-eye with the vaunted Undertaker, their feud boiling over into Hell in a Cell, where Brock cemented his name in history by delivering a decisive and bloody and brutal defeat to Undertaker. Though he would wrestle another year, losing and regaining the championship many times, Brock's run as the dominant man in the business didn't come to an end until 2004, where he was trampled by human freight train Bill Goldberg at WrestleMania 20 in 2004. The WWE sought to recapture a true badass for years after Brock's departure. In 2011, however, they hit pay dirt with the longtime veteran who began inducting various men into the vaunted Hall of Pain. Mark Henry was 16 years into his WWE career when he finally began to show his worth. He had, at times, delved into the anger and ferocity within him, but never to the level seen during 2011 to 2012, where Henry spent time demolishing opponents, breaking barricades and rings, while capturing his only world title. Mark Henry wouldn't last. Soon, he slid back into his pre-Hall of Fame comfort zone of a good-natured powerlifter. Brock's return in 2012 brought the second age of Lesnar, one that would eclipse any attempts to make another, more formidable badass. Brock only proved that his first run was no fluke and that he was truly the WWF's most powerful force. In 2020, in the shadow of the COVID-19 pandemic, Brock stayed away. He was defeated by the heroic warrior Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania 36. McIntyre would establish himself as a top player for WWE, beating back many a competitor. He lost and regained the title, staying true to himself and warding off threats. While Drew McIntyre enjoyed success, something bubbled beneath the surface of Monday Night Raw. A superstar who felt overlooked, one who had come and gone from WWE just like Drew, one who was earmarked for success just like Drew, but had never been given Drew's opportunities. Bobby Lashley. Securing a partnership with MVP led Lashley to capture the United States Championship in 2020. Then he goes on an absolute tear with the title, demanding recognition for what he had already achieved. Soon, Lashley had been jerked out of the U.S. title by triple threat shenanigans and decided the time was now to fulfill his destiny. A Faustian bargain with The Miz created an opportunity. When he got the chance, Lashley struck and won the WWE title. He went on to wreck and mangle challengers afterwards, including the mountainous Braun Strowman and the aforementioned Drew McIntyre. As this video comes to a close, the WWE has currently 3 badass champions as heels. The almighty Bobby Lashley ruling the roost on Raw, flanked by his advisor MVP. The brutal Karrion Kross wreaking havoc on NXT, accompanied by the witchy Scarlett. And the calm, detached, princely Roman Reigns occupying the kingdom of SmackDown. The fate of the badass is to die, however. When will these badasses fall? Alright, so thank you guys for listening. Like this video, share this video, and subscribe to this channel. And I'll talk to you guys later. I can only be